Alright guys, in this video we will be going through how to animate your comic book panels using Adobe After Effects. Okay, for this particular exercise, I would like you to use Adobe After Effects. For your assignment, you can choose to use other video editing software, but you can even use Photoshop for that matter. But I think After Effects produces the nicest result. So anyway, let's get into it. I have already prepared a zip file for today's exercise. So once you have unzipped the zip file, you should be able to find some of these files over here. But before we begin, maybe we can take a look at what is the intended end result for today's exercise. Alright, so this is a sort of fan art that I did for one of your juniors' studio project. I took the characters that they designed, put it into a scene, and then I thought, it's a good idea to maybe animate it to make it more interesting. Alright, so today we were doing something like this, definitely with this art assets that I've created. But just gonna maybe do something slightly different because I've already did this and it'd be very boring to just recreate this entirely. But most of the principles will be similar to what I have over here. Anyways, after you have unzipped the zip file, you should find the spliced art assets over here. So all this drawing, the drawing itself is already separated to the individual characters and props within the illustration. Okay, so just open up After Effects. I've already opened up it over here, and just import everything into your file. So just go ahead. If when you open it, if you don't see this screen, maybe instead you see the opening screen, just click on a new project and then navigate over to your folder with the unzipped images and just drag it and drop it within this project folder or project panel. Typically it's on the left hand side. So unlike Photoshop, which I think you guys have quite a considerable mastery over the software, I'm not sure how comfortable are you in After Effects. So if there are certain things maybe I glossed over, just let me know. Message me on Discord or anything like that, or something like that. Anyway, drag this over to the project panel. Typically it's located on the left side, and you should see all your stuff over here. Okay, within the zip folder, it should also include this final artwork, where it's like this, right? You should import that in as well. Okay, to begin, simply drag this completed artwork over here into the timeline below. All right, just drag it to the timeline below automatically. Okay, let me just change my setup so that it looks more similar to yours. Automatically, you should see a composition being created. Alright, so in After Effects, they just call it comps. It's kind of similar to your PSD file. Well, I guess I can't draw a direct comparison to how it is in Photoshop. But anyway, you create a file called a composition. Alright, and you can identify it as something different over here. Okay, based on its logo or icon. Alright, so this you can double check, go under composition settings. It should be similar to what I have over here. Alright, so the main thing to look out for is the width and the height. So right now we are doing a full HD, at least for this particular exercise, we are doing full HD. So it should be 1920 by 1080p. For the frame rate, you just use 29.97 frame rate. if you don't see it over here, you can click over on this arrow to there'll be a drop down with a couple of preset options, and just select 129.97. And for the duration, we'll just be doing 5 seconds, right? 5 seconds, not minutes, seconds, all right? Just be a very short clip, right? And once all these things are confirmed, you can just click OK or cancel. It doesn't matter because most likely we're not changing anything, but if you are changing anything, just click OK to confirm those changes. All right, so we have this final image over here. What we want to do is we want to also import in all these spliced elements into our composition as well. So let me just click on the first one, hold down shift and select the last one, and then I will just hold down control to just select the other ones as well. So I'm basically what I'm doing is I'm just selecting the other art assets that are not these two, right? This is the all-in-one JPEG, and then when we drag it down to the timeline, it produces this composition over here. So we are adding all the other art assets into our composition as well. So I selected everything, drag and drop. So I want to drop it above the reference image that I'm going to use. Okay, so by default, when I was creating these assets, I made it so that it is 2 times the size of the final video that I had in mind. Alright, this is because I will be doing some zooming in and I don't want to lose any quality. So I just to be safe, I made it 2 times the size. Alright. Anyways, now I want to scale it down so that it fits into this whole canvas. To do so, I hit the S key to bring out the scale options, as you can see over here. Just take note, with all of these layers that I've just imported in, still selected, so that right now when I change the scale, I am changing it for every layer. Okay, so with the scale parameter selected, I'll just click on one of them and type in 50%, make it shrink it down by half the size. All right, and then I click enter. Everything should be 50. By default, the aspect ratio is kind of locked. So when you change 50 on the x-axis, the y-axis is also set to 50 as well. All right, width and height. Okay, so just scroll down to make sure that everything is 50. It's fine. Okay, you can click on this little arrow here to kind of collapse the layer again so that you don't see so much information all at one go. So I click on this. Okay, everything is fine. Now I need to sequence the layer so that it makes sense. Right now I'm seeing some information, but it's definitely not the version I want to see. Okay, so what I would do is actually when I splice up these images, I've already named the files accordingly. So those on the background layer will have a prefix of BG. Those on the midground layer will have a prefix of MG. Okay, maybe my face is blocking it. Okay, maybe for now, let me just type face. Let's give out this mode. Okay, here. Okay, so background will be BG, midground will be MG, and of course for foreground it will be FG. Alright, so what I want to do now is I want to shift it such that all the BG stuff is located below. Alright, so similar to Photoshop, any layer that appears on top will be shown first. Any layer that is below will be rendered last. So for example, if let's say I have a ball on layer 1 and I have a triangle on layer 2, it will show up like this. Versus if I have a triangle on layer 1 and the ball on layer 2, it will show up something like this. Okay, makes sense, using the same logic as Photoshop layers. Anyways, let me just reorder them such that it's like this. So there are two files called grading underscore overlay 10, grading underscore overlay 15. These are just the color grading layers that I created. For now, we can just hide them. Okay, in fact, for now, I would just hide all the grading, foreground, and midground layers and just work on the background, right? Um, just to check, I think background gradient should be the last, the furthermost layer. Then we have this bg underscore far. Okay, let me just move it down as well, and I think that's it. Yeah, I want the fragment layer to be above the 3 layer. Okay, this is all good. Next, I would want I want to remove the mid-ground layer. So let me just unhide all this. Okay. And probably I want to move the monster down a little bit more so that I can see the whole monster. Okay, the reason why I imported this in the first place is to use it as a guide. So if you uh, hide the gradient layer, right, you'll be able to see the original artwork at the back. Okay, so let me just select on this monster again and maybe try to nudge it such that I am directly above the original artwork. Maybe a pixel off here and there, it's fine. Okay, I think that's it for this. So let me just unhide the foreground layers and then shift them around as well. Okay, so this character, this orange character over here should be the topmost layer because she is the one that is closest to the camera, right? In terms of the character. So let me just shape it so that it's kind of overlapping the original artwork. And then I think the dust layer, I do want to appear above the character. So let me just shift the dust layer on top, something like this. And of course, there's this rock layer over here that I want to be the closest to the camera. So let me just shift it up to the third layer. And then I have the ground. It's fine here. I have the speech. So for the speech bubble, it's slightly different from the final image. Because I realized after trying to animate it that putting it over here would be a bit too tight. So I actually changed the look of the speech bubble so that it's coming down like this. So I just put it over here. And then finally I have this second character called Xena. For Xena, I will move her above the ground layer so that she looks like she's standing on the ground. And I will move her over here. Let me just compare it. Let me just hide the ground layer so that I can compare it against the final image. Nudge it so that it's kind of above this. And yeah, that's about it. So if you show your background gradient again, it should be kind of similar to to our final image. I can also compare it over here like this, just to compare. Alright, next we will go through the grading. We will apply or we will unhide the grading layers over here. So let me just unhide it. You'll see all these funky textures. Okay, maybe I'll just do it one by one. Okay, so it says here in the layer name, right, that it's overlay 15. So the way I name it is just what kind of blending mode are you should you be using? Okay, so instead of normal, let us just change it to overlay. So if you don't see this blending options over here, what you can do is under this part, right, toggle switches / modes, just click on it. So maybe by default you are viewing something that looks more like this, right? But once you click on this toggle switches / mode, you should be able to see something like this. Okay, so click under normal and change it to overlay. Okay, right now it's too drastic. So over here it says overlay 15. So the way I name it is just set the opacity to 15 instead of 100, right? So to set the opacity, click on the T key. Okay, so you should be able to see opacity over here. Now, just to clarify, you can actually see all the options by clicking on this little button, this arrow key on each layer, right? If I were to expand this fully, I would be able to see all the available options: angle point, position, scale, rotation, opacity. But sometimes, I only want to see certain parameters. I don't want to see every parameter. It's just too much, especially if you have a lot of layers as it is over here. So instead, we will just use the shortcut key, which is T, right? Now that we can see the opacity, just change it to 15. And it's kind of there, but not there, you kind of just feel it. So the same thing for the this texture over here. I will just set it to overlay, and I will set the opacity to 10 as indicated on this in this file name 10, right? So it's kind of there but not there, just kind of a subtle color correction effect, right? That's very, very subtle. All right, now that we have set up the composition, again, don't forget to save your file, save often. Once we have the composition set up, we want to convert it into a 3D scene. All right, sounds very daunting, but it's not that difficult, trust me. All right, what you want to do is you want to decide what are the elements on the screen that you want to make 3D, because you probably don't want to make everything 3D. So in this example, I would probably not make the back gradient 3D. I will not make the far, this bg underscore far, the elements over here 3D, because right now I'm trying to create the parallax effect when I'm scrolling through, things are moving in a different speed based on their depth. For me, these two elements, bg underscore far and bg underscore gradient, is just too far away to have any special effects tied to it. So I don't need them to move at all, actually. So I don't need to select this. Similarly, I don't need to select the grading layers, because it's just going to apply across the board, across the entire image. So I don't need to do that as well. Okay, let me just touch this. I realize that there's a little bit of gap over here. So what I would select is the in-between layers. So from fg underscore rocks to bg underscore 3. Anyway, once again, I just want to emphasize this is an exercise. For this exercise, we are using these art assets. For your own assignment, you may not want to splice it up into so many layers. Maybe yours is just a background, foreground, and midground, 3 layers. But of course, the more layers you have, the more customizable your animation will be. Anyway, back to this. With all this selected, let us just toggle back into the switches mode, alright, or the switches view. Okay, click on this to show this again. What we want to click on next is to select this 3D icon, right? To check this on all the layers that we have selected. Alright, this will essentially convert them into 3D layers. Okay, so with all these layers selected, just click once in any of these 3D boxes. It will just, by default, it will just select everything that you have selected. So you notice over here that the transformation gizmo has kind of changed a little bit. Right now it's showing something more similar to what you see in Maya, right? It's like in three-dimensional space. Right now, because we are looking through a very flat camera, it can be very difficult to see. So to switch to a 3D camera, right, you can go over here, right? Right now there are different views, right? You can choose, right now it's just the active camera. You can choose the top angle. You can choose custom view one, which is more of a 3D view. But let us just go back to the default view first. A more friendly way to work with this, I personally find, is to just click on this under one view, click on this, and it's over here, right? Click on this and select two views. Okay, so I'll just select two views, and right now I have the active camera and I also have the top view over here. So select this top view. You know that you are selecting the top view when there's this blue triangles on it. I know it's a bit subtle, but yeah, once you have selected on it, just change it to custom view one, right? You will have this 3D view. So you can work on this 3D view, and you can also have a preview of how is it like on your camera. When working in this custom view, right, you can actually orbit around the camera similar to how you can orbit around Maya's viewport. By holding down the Alt key, you notice that your cursor changes, and you can click and you can actually orbit around the camera like this. It's a bit laggy depending on your hardware, your machine, but at least you can maneuver in 3D space. Alright, the next thing we want to do is we want to set up a camera. Right, by default there's an active camera, but because we will want more controls later on, we will want to animate the camera, so you want to create a camera. So to create a camera, click on Layer, New, and Camera. Alright, Layer, New, and Camera. New camera, and these are the default settings. It's by default it's set to the 50 mm preset. I think we don't need to change anything for this. Make sure that it's a 2-node camera, which I believe it's the default. I've been using this software for a while, so maybe I made that change. So I don't quite know. So if on your end you see it's a 1-node camera, just change it to a 2-node camera. Other than that, I think we can leave everything at its default values and click on OK. Right, once you have a camera, you should be able to see this on your custom view one. Right, and I think by default it will just automatically set the other viewport to the active camera, which is camera one, the one that we just created. So to just check, you can move this thing around, and you should be able to see some changes. All right, the next thing, what we want to do is we want to kind of explode our. Okay, I'm not sure why I'm gesturing to the camera because I have hidden my camera. So let me just enable it back. Next thing we want to do is we want to explode our layers. All right, we want to make sure that the layer that is the furthest is actually the furthest in terms of in terms of its z depth in this viewport. All right, so let me just do an example. I select the BG3, which is supposed to be the furthest layer, this tree thingy over here on the top left. And I really want to move it back, like way back, okay? And you notice as I am moving it back, it's becoming smaller over here. In fact, you can actually see that this asset, right, when I created it, I didn't give some allowance, like parts of the clouds are being cropped off. Okay, so ideally when you are making assets like this, you want to make sure that everything is in whole. You shouldn't be you would want to avoid making assets that look like this, like it's being cropped off lah. But I gotta be honest with you, when I was making this illustration, I didn't uh think that I would eventually make an animated version of this, right? I just, after making it, I thought, hey, it would be great example to use for this exercise. But anyways, to solve that, I will just need to, after moving it backwards, I will just need to scale it up, right? Scale it up so that it kind of fits the entire uh, page or entire canvas, right? Something like that. Okay, so with that done, I will proceed to do the same for the subsequent layers. I'll just move things back, click on S for scale and just scale things up. Trying to match the original uh, original layout. Alright, so move all the way back, scale it up. Like that. You don't have to be super precise at this point because we might still shift things around later, and would probably see why later once we are at that stage. Something like that. Monster backwards as well. Scale it up. Okay, that's fine. Move the dust back as well. Scale it up. So obviously this step will be way easier or way faster if you sort of don't have so many layers, right? Okay, something like that. I think I don't need to really move this so much. Okay, I'll move this character a little bit closer to the camera. Move the speech bubble closer to the camera. Foreground dust closer to the camera. The rocks really close to the camera. Okay, right now you can't quite see them. So instead of making them smaller, I'll just try to shift them into frame. Okay, something like that. Maybe I have to make them smaller. Alright, something like this. I think it's fine. So as you can see over here, let me just kind of zoom in. Oops. Back to, yeah. You can see over here how I have kind of exploded the stuff like this, right? To kind of have this depth, kind of introduce this depth. Okay, and as I move this camera, you will see the kind of parallax effects that I'm creating over here. So when I'm moving, it's kind of laggy, but hopefully you can kind of see how this foreground rock layer is moving way more compared to the tree at the far background, right? Of course, the whole thing breaks once you shift it out of position, uh, which again is part of the reason why there might be certain things that you need to readjust later on. But for now, I think in terms of the level of that, it's fine. Okay, the next thing we want to move into would be to animate the characters. Alright, so in the example that I showed just now, the character was moving, like this character was having some kind of breathing movement to her. All right, so let me just quickly show you how to introduce such animations to your art assets. So maybe I can use this front character as an example, just to show you how to do it. For this, maybe I just go back to the one view so that I can have a bigger view of the character as I'm doing it. So the feature that I would be using for this would be this feature called the puppet pin. All right, so it's located over here, this pin icon. Okay, so click on puppet pin, and you may want to zoom into your image. And I would like to set anchor points. So the way puppet pin works is very similar to that of Spine, the 2D animation software. But you don't exactly create bones over here, but you just create like points of influence. So, but you can think of them kind of similar to bones. All right. So for this, I'll just do a very simple and subtle animation just to show that she's not dead lah. There is some movement and because I want to make this tutorial video short, so I don't do a very difficult animation. But in your case, of course, you can experiment with a more drastic animation. Anyways, based on my knowledge of bones, typically I want to set one on the head, I want to set one on the neck, maybe one on the shoulder, one on the elbow, and one over here to control her hand. I also want to set up some bones that serves to lock the pixels around that area, because the problem with just having these bones is that when you shift this, for example, this part, the legs will shift as well, like over here, something like that, right? No, it's a little bit laggy. So I want to create some bones over here to kind of lock the pixels that I don't want to move. So I will just create one probably on the knee, one probably here. So I just test it again. As you can see, the area of influence becomes smaller. Of course, you can have a lot, you can spam a lot of bones, and maybe I want one over here on her other shoulder as well, just so that when I move this, yeah, only her chest is really moving. And you know, you can go ahead and spam a lot of these points over here, but it will make your animation task a little bit more challenging later on. Okay, with this bones kind of setup, right? What we want to do is we want to create the animation. So right now, I just want to do a very simple and subtle animation of her finger kind of going upwards. That's it. All right. So to do that, I want to hold down the control key, and when I hold down the control key, you'll notice that the cursor switches from just a regular one to a cursor with a clock symbol, all right, to indicate that you are kind of in a keyframe setting mode, right? So with the control held down, I want to click on one of the points, in this case, the one that is closest to the hand, and I want to drag it, but I want to drag it slowly, because when I drag it, right, you will notice that there's this timeline that's running on the on the timeline over here. Rephrase. There's this kind of thing, this, I don't know what you call this, time indicator that is going through the timeline as I am clicking on this, right? So just keep your eyes peeled on this area, right? So I'm just gonna click this and move it up. Okay, you do not have to wait until the time is up. Okay, but you notice that as it moves, right now, it's actually recording. It's actually recording your changes to uh the point over here. Okay, so I will do the same for the head as well. Maybe I want her to kind of tilt forward a little bit. I want her head to tilt forward a little bit. So Let's click on this, tilt it forward. Okay. Next, maybe I want her chest to go in a little bit, just as a counter movement. But maybe it will look bad. I don't know. Let me just try it a little bit. Okay. Okay, with that done, okay, maybe I want to do the left shoulder as well. Left shoulder, maybe the left elbow, push it in a little bit. Okay. So with that done, and with her layer selected, I will click U. Okay, U will show all the keyframes that you have selected. So by default, when you open up U, right, or you click on U, right, it should show you all the puppet pin keyframes, or at least the ones that you have actually keyframed just now. So just now I worked on this 5 spots. So you can see the keyframes being laid out over here. I just want to shift all of them so that it flushes on the final frame over here. I'm just moving, making sure that it's all the way to the final, right? At this point, while I'm scrolling through it, maybe I noticed that there are some things I want to change. It is possible. I just move to that keyframe and I just kind of shift it to tweak the animation. Maybe I don't quite like how the final frame is looking, so I'm just adjusting it, right? Something like that. Okay, and I can also preview the animation by hitting the space bar. But depending on how heavy your scene is, sometimes it can take a while. Right now it's kind of laggy. Let me just let it run one time, and then you'll be looking at it in real time after that. Yeah, so something like this, just a very simple animation. I think it's good enough for this exercise. For the other character, I'll leave it up to you to try it out on your own. What kind of animation you want for her. In my example, I made her kind of brief, kind of pen. Like she just endured a very uh, tough escape, or she had to crawl her way into this area. She's just very exhausted. um I guess one last thing I want to show you is sometimes you may want to do something more advanced, right? So maybe in this case, for the hand, I want her to kind of her finger when she's moving up to kind of move in a more arc like uh trajectory. We learn in animation that everything should be moving in an arc-like fashion. So I will introduce another keyframe over here, and since I already created keyframes, I can just shift this around, and you notice that it automatically created another keyframe, right? It's kind of moving like this now, right? But this is somewhat unrealistic, and maybe I should kind of key this as well. Maybe the last post can be something like that. Maybe just kind of trying to fine tune it. But you notice that, going back to this, you notice that this is kind of linear. Like the trajectory of this is kind of linear. So what you can do is you can go under here and identify that, oh, this is actually puppet pin number 5. And just go ahead and select this keyframes, right click, and under keyframe, under keyframe interpolation. Alright, just make sure that all these things are set to Bezier. By default, they might be set to linear. And then click OK. And once you are done, you should be able to see that this curve is slightly more gradual. Okay, and you can click on this angle points over here to refine it. For the purpose of this exercise, you don't have to go to that level, but for your own personal assignment, you may want to kind of clean up some of the curve so that it looks realistic and nice, right? So let me just, for the sake of cleanliness, just do it for this as well. Okay, so more of a arc movement to the to our finger. Let it load. The result. Okay. Anyway, the movement is pretty subtle, so you probably can't tell the difference. But I think it's looks fine. So as I mentioned, I'll leave it up to you to apply this technique on the other two characters, right? This Xena and also this monster at the back. You probably don't want to work on this. Oh, and another tip to share: if you do want to apply this puppet pin effect, it is best to isolate that character on its own PNG file, right? Because if, let's say, for this layer, I believe the monster and the background, this pillar thingy over here is on the same layer, it makes it very difficult to animate this monster, because whenever you are shifting things around, the pillar uh will also react to it, which is unnatural, because the pillar is a very solid surface, right? By right, it should not move at all. Okay, so just take note of that. Okay, moving forward, there are also other things that you may try. You can also try, for example, I have this dust layer over here, right? You can kind of animate it moving across the screen. All right, so to do so, just hit on P for position. Click on the little stopwatch icon over here. Previously, it was just something like this without the blue. So once you have activated it, it means that you already created a keyframe on this frame, and then move to the last frame and just kind of move this across. Okay, of course you can, if you're more advanced, you can go in and add some go to effects and add some distortion, maybe a turbulence displacement or something like that, just to give the effect a little bit more activity. Looks like it's actually rolling, like the smoke is actually rolling. But again, for this exercise, we keep it simple, especially for those who don't really have a lot of experience with After Effects. We just try to keep it simple. So as you can see, if I can preview it right now, it kind of already gives a effect that the uh, dust behind is kind of moving. Maybe a bit too fast. You can make it more subtle. Yeah, but already it feels like there is some activity going on in the page. Okay. One more thing I want to show you is to animate, how to animate the camera. Okay, so let me just go back to the two views over here. Right now, if I were to move this camera, the whole thing would move, right? The whole thing would move. But what I want instead is I want the effect whereby the target of the camera is locked into one position, one spot. And then I want to kind of move the camera and, orbit the camera around. Kind of give this kind of feel. I don't know how to describe it, but hopefully through the result you can see. So what we want to do in right now is to lock this target over here, because once again, when you are shifting this thing, right, this target also moves. So we want to lock this target. Okay, so what we can do is we can go under layer, new, and create a null object. Right, new, layer new, null object. Okay, so let me just do that. Okay, so this null object by default is just created in the middle of the canvas. Okay, we want to And this is important. We want to make sure that the now object is a 3D object as well. So go under here and click on this and check this box over here. So it becomes a 3D object. The reason why we want it to be a 3D object is because later on this camera target, right, will be sampling the X, Y, and Z value of this now object. Okay, so it needs to have the Z value as well. If it were not a 3D object, it wouldn't have a Z value. Anyway, let us expand on this camera one options over here, and let us continue to expand the transform so that we can see this thing. If you don't see a point of interest parameter over here, it means that in your camera not composition settings, in your camera settings, right, this is a one node camera and not a two node camera. Just make sure that you are using a two node camera, right? So I will click on the now one object as well and expand on the transform and expand on the I'll just click on P. I'll just click on P because it's too much information over here, right? I'll just click on P for position. Okay, so now as I mentioned, I want to link this point of interest to the XYZ value of the now object. To do so, I just need to click on this spiral symbol over here, click and hold, and drag it to this position, right? Okay, so now this thing is locked to this object. If I move the now object, the target will follow as well. But of course, I don't want to move the now object. I just want to move this camera. So select the camera again, and when you turn this time around, it will look more like this, right? It will look more like that. Okay, so this time instead of doing what I did previously, I will just okay, for this effect, maybe it'll be better if the BG far is also a 3D layer. So let me just do that real quick. Select BG far, turn it into a 3D layer, and move it all the way to the back, and then scale it up real big. Like that, maybe all the way to the back. Okay, I think something like that. And going back to the camera, what I want to do is I want to animate the position. So I click on the position over here, and then I move to the final frame, and then I shift this camera like that. Okay, to the point where the image breaks, as you can see, kind of see over here. Okay, maybe I'll do something like this, just to check out the effect again. Press spacebar. See. Okay, maybe I can do a bit more. Maybe I can first emphasize on this tree and then kind of zoom out as well. Zoom in so that we can have that really nice backward there. E. Something like that, and then the camera will kind of fly out. Something like that. see if the effect is nice. Oh yeah, looking good. But there are some issues, like you can see over here the image kind of reveals itself that certain parts are cropped off. So maybe I can go inside there, go to the last frame and just make sure that all these things are still within frame. Shift things around so it looks like it's within the frame. This I might have to make it a little bit bigger. That the tree, maybe I move it way up there. Okay, just to compare to the last frame. Alright, everything is still there. And maybe one last thing I could do is, because right now the text box is kind of distracting, right? I want to look at this and not that. So I can click on this text box and kind of make it appear later on. So an idea I have is maybe firstly I will just set the anchor point so that uh, the text box, the anchor point of this text box is right at the corner. I think I can just type in 000. It should work. Yeah, something like this. And let me just reposition this text box again somewhere closer to her mouth. Alright, so then I want the text box to kind of expand outwards from there. Right, so I would just play with the scale. Right, so the final scale should be 50. Okay, so the first frame it should be 0, and then maybe somewhere around here, around the 1 second mark, it will come out. So I'll set this to 0 again, so that during the first second nothing happens or nothing comes out, and then when the video is at the 1 second mark, the text box will pop up, and then you should have this like kind of uh rubbery effect, right? It comes out and then yeah, I realized that my thing is probably blocking some of the, but I don't think you will be able to see some of the values that I'm keying in. I'm just going with my gut right now. Maybe I make it slightly more make this effect slightly more exaggerated. So maybe I can go with 44, then maybe 56. So right now I'm just trying to do that kind of rubbery effect. Let's see if it works out. When you have to retime it. Yeah, right now it looks a bit laggy because we are. Okay, one thing I don't like is how the yeah, it's definitely a bit too slow. Yeah, okay, let's kind of retime it. Make this snappier. Maybe on 2 is fine. Try this first. Okay, and I think the position of this should be a bit higher, so it doesn't tangent with the fingers over here. So let us just preview it again. Okay. I think it can still be improved on, but I think it's just to show you guys how it can be done. Let me just do a full preview. Yeah, I think it can be improved on, but the basic concept is there. So something like this, you can see subtle movements within the character. You can see some movement on the environment effect as well. Of course, you can take this up even a notch, um, but you can go ahead and find more After Effects tutorial. But hopefully, this is good enough to give you guys some kind of a start on how you can animate your panels. But before you close this video, I still yet to teach you how to export the file, right? So let me just pause this. Of course, save. I haven't saved so far, so I'm leaving on the edge. But once you're done, click on composition and click on add to media encoder queue. Right. So this will fire up media encoder, which may take some time. But once media encoder is open, see if it's just a loading screen right now. Once it is open, you can then select the file format, which in this case it should be MP4, and your destination to export the file in, and that's about it. So right now, what is this? I think I already clicked on something, so let me just remove one of them. So just select H.264. This will create an MP4 format file. So ignore this MPEG-4. Click on H.264. And then for the preset, I think you should be fine. You can go with this high bitrate option. If you want to have more details on it, you can click on this high bitrate option over here to see what is the eventual file size, which in this case is 6 MB, so it's pretty small. Anyway, it's just a 5-second video, so it should be fine. Alright, so you can go ahead and export it and then submit it for today's exercise. Before you close this video, one last thing. Alright, I swear this is the one last thing. For your assignment, it won't just be one panel in one page, right? In one page there could be multiple panels. And the requirement for your assignment is just one animated panel within each page. So there should be at least 4 animated panels. I'm not sure again why am I gesturing when I did this on my video. Okay, there should be at least one animated panel in each page. So since there's a minimum requirement of 4 pages, there should be 4 animated panels in total. So the other panels within that page, they can be static, it's fine. Okay, so let me just show you a very quick example of how you can kind of combine these elements, the static panels and the animated panels. Okay, so over here I did a very simple example of a page. And I also, okay, very importantly, I cropped up this panel. Okay, but I will show you why I do it. Alright, so anyway, I haven't import the cropped up panel yet. Okay, so with this page selected, I drag it into the make composition button over here, because there's already something here. So if I drag it to this timeline directly, right, I'm just adding to the composition, but I want to create a new composition with this as my background. Okay, so instead of dragging over to the timeline, I drag over to this button over here. Okay, which creates a new composition, something simple like this. Alright, so to bring over what I've done just now, I just need to select on the composition. Remember, the composition, not the files itself, the composition. Alright, and put it into this composition. So I'm essentially combining stuff, right? So after that, I can just kind of resize, keeping the shift key held to constrain the proportion. If not, it will just go crazy like that. And then just kind of resize it so that it matches what I want. Right. So imagine it's this full panel over here at the bottom, right? So you have your other static panels, and then you also have this part that has this effect, right? Pretty cool. But what if your panel has a more elaborate design? Okay, so something like that. Just cut out like that. In this case, right, you want to cut out this part in Photoshop and save it as a PNG file, like what I did over here. This file. Okay, and I import it in, and I place it over here and just kind of shift it in place like that. Okay, next I would want to shift it above this layer that I have. Maybe I just resize it a little bit like this, something like that. The way that the After Effects masking works is slightly different from Photoshop. If you're using clipping mask in Photoshop, you want the mask to be at the bottom. But in this case, I actually want the mask to be at the top, I think. Yeah. So anyway, click on this toggle switches and modes button so that you are seeing this modes page or section. Next, I want to click on this track mat for my animation composition. Right, I want to click on this and I want to select alpha matte panel. Okay, by doing so, you notice that it's actually picking up the shape of the image that I used just now. Right, so this is for if you have a custom design shape for the panel. One last thing, if you want to add in the outline, right, very simple, just right click on this layer, go to layer styles and add a stroke. Alright, you can expand on the stroke options and change the color, the size, and the position. So in this case, I will change the color to black. I would set the position to inside and maybe set the stroke to be a bit thicker. Okay, so something like that. So imagine using your imagination that all these other panels are filled up with amazing illustration, right? And then you have this one panel that's also animated. So once you are done with this, same thing, go under composition, add to Adobe Media Encoder, queue and render it as a MP4 video using the H.264 codec. Okay, simple. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via Discord, and I'll be glad to answer them. Alright, but yes, go through this. You may need to go through this video tutorial a couple of times to understand certain concepts. But yeah, if you find it's still very confusing, you can ask me. Okay, and I'll see you again sometime later. Bye bye.